So do you have any memories from training? Like, do you remember what your first week of Army training was like?
Well, that gets back to the boot camp.
Yeah.
It wasn't fun. I mean, you know, the short haircuts and the total difference of Army regimen as they getting up at, I can't believe it was as late as 6, but I'll accept 6. I think it felt more like 5, you know, and falling out for calisthenics, just endless calisthenics, with a drill instructor shouting instructions to you, what do you want to do, you know, so many push-ups, etc., which is just foreign to us, particularly who wanted to be in the Air Force. I mean, that kind of regimen was absolutely deplorable. We had no intention of being toughened up to be ground fighters. So that was pretty cool. Cool in the sense that everybody tried to evade everything they could, volunteer for nothing, the long marches. But gradually you eased into it and stood in line for mess hall food and enjoyed the PX where things were discounted in price. I think cigarettes were a nickel. Everybody smoked in those days, believe me. And followed through, got through basic training at Amarillo, Texas, and ultimately, as I said, went on to what we really trained for as gunners.
So when did you go to training?
And to active duty, that was in 44. Yeah, it was in 44, April of 44. And actually training was almost a year. Basic training, of course, was basic Army boot camp training, you know, close order drill and marches and orientation lectures, KP, and of course taking the various, that was the turning point, I guess you might say. It was about 13 weeks, and part of all of that was taking various tests to determine whether you could qualify for one of the specialty fields in the Air Force, particularly pilot training. But at that point, they were cutting back. They had a good pool of pilots at that point. They were cutting back, we were told. I don't think that was the main reason it didn't qualify, because I know for a fact that of many of the tests they gave for qualification, one was to qualify to a certain degree, which we were never told, of eye-hand coordination tests. And I don't think I was that good on the hand-eye coordination in any event when the rosters came out as to those few that might go to a cadet training in San Antonio, Texas. The rest had an option of going to gunnery school, and if they didn't like that, they would go into the infantry. Well, that left no choice. I mean, obviously I took gunnery school in Laredo, Texas.
So tell me about the crew you were with, the 10 of you guys.
From all over the country. The pilot, I recall, was Black Jack Shattuck was his name. And he was older as a National Guard pilot, much older as pilots were at that part of the war. Most of our pilots, I would say, were really 21 or 22 years of age, actually, flying those B-24s. So I think Black Jack was, I think he was around 28. And that was, he was the old man. How that happened, I don't know. But he was a pilot. We had our navigator and bombardier. The bombardier was he was younger. He was in the 22-year range. He was married. The navigator, I recall, was married. Quite strange. I mean, when you really think of it at that point in time, these married men that were part of the crew. And the rest of us, as enlisted member about my age group, became friends with our nose gunner. His name was Rodriguez. I've been friends with all of them, except you don't become friendly with the officers. That's not a... In flight, your business like and friendly, but there is no association, as you can imagine, between the officer ranks and the enlisted men. But my closest friend his name was Rodriguez. He was a Mexican kid from Vallejo, and we became pretty good friends during the service. Well, I don't know what else I can really tell you about.
So what did you do? What was your role in the plane?
Actually very benign, because our missions were at night, which is a rarity. As a tail turret gunner, the sole purpose really would be to ward off attacking enemy planes who might be attacking from the rear of the plane. But since there was very few night fighters in existence with the Japanese, we, in terms of our particular patrolling that late in the war, did not encounter any. So you might say I was a passenger with a very little of a contribution to the war
Alright,
effort.
so what did you do during the long flights? Was it just sitting there?
Sitting there, waiting for a strafing run. Yeah, nothing nothing glamorous.
So what did you do in Okinawa?
Same thing.
Same thing.
Same thing.
Were the conditions any different than Morotai? Nicer?
Oh well,
worse?
they were much drier. Much drier. You didn't have mosquitoes. In fact, that's a story. They did not have mosquitoes in Okinawa, where they did, in the jungle areas in the South Pacific. So, although everyone was issued as part of their equipment a mosquito net, they threw them away in the trash cans in Okinawa. They didn't need them. And I know I was issued one, as everyone else, when we landed on our way to Morotai in New Guinea, and we knew we weren't going to stay there. I traded my mosquito net. What was it for? I know I traded it, and it was to a native, and I don't know what I think he gave me some rum or some type of booze for that mosquito net. But be it as it may, I didn't have a mosquito net, and we were supposed to have them. But nobody thought a bit of it. Went to Okinawa, and wonderful. But when you were discharged and left after the war, were discharged and had to turn in equipment, they wanted to know where the mosquito net was, mosquito netting that was issued. So I told them, oh, I know. I gave them a fictitious name as to who I was. I said it was Mike Hartley, my very good friend. And he was on Okinawa. I met him there. I hadn't seen him all during the war. And how did that work? I put his name, oh, I know. When they issued the mosquito net, when we got to Biak, we needed the mosquito net because we were staying overnight and you had to have a mosquito net. That's when it was issued, and when they issued it to me, I wrote his name down, that he was a recipient of the net by the supply sergeant. They weren't issued in the States, they were given to us as an overnight use because of the mosquito problem, because we were on our way to Morotai. So I had the mosquito netting, I didn't turn it in, sold it to a native on my way. And to get home, I had to have a mosquito net because they tracked me, that supply sergeant, when he didn't get his mosquito netting back. Now bear in mind, that's just a $5 item, let's say, and he just had my name. I mean, Mike's name as serial number. And he traced him through the records all the way back that they said he was located on Okinawa. And they went after him. They called him in, his squadron supply sergeant wanted to know what happened to the mosquito netting that allegedly he got in Biak. And Mike said, I've never been to Biak. He was in the 7th Air Force, and they knew he couldn't have had it. And he knew who did it too, because he knew I had come up because I met him in Okinawa, and the story came out. He knew that I had signed his name to it, and we had a big laugh over it because coming back home, you didn't need him. You didn't need this mosquito netting, but that supply sergeant, he wanted just dues because he knew somebody stole it from him. It was funny. It was very humorous.